What's up, boys? This season's Fathers of the Future podcast is brought to you by ScottsdalePodcast.com. It's the studio that I'm in right now. Here's the deal. If you have a story, if you have a mission, if you have an interview, if you have something deep and meaningful in your heart that you need to share, that you need to get out, that you need to promote, that you need to fundraise, that you need to build, let ScottsdalePodcast.com be the place that you can come to create, to design, to sit down, to interview another person, to build your personal brand. I'm so excited to be getting started to bring you a new version of the Fathers of the Future podcast, as we are going to be putting out 10 new episodes in the next couple months with video as well as audible. Shout out to my man Martin here at the ScottsdalePodcast.com. Welcome back to the Fathers of the Future podcast. I'm so excited to not only be recording our 100th experience, but to be doing it with the man that we first had on as our very first episode, July 30th, 2019, the one and only, the only Matt Ryan. Welcome to the show, brother.
Well, thank you very much, Luke. What an incredible opportunity to come on the show and share after many years have passed. But, you know, you've been with me, since 2017, I think it was, actually. So you have great perspective on some turbulence that's occurred during that time.
Yeah, absolutely. As we were putting together the short list of men to have on the show for 100, you were on that. And at first I had to ask you, what were your thoughts, without just thinking you would automatically do it, because a lot has changed. Let's go back for a moment to how we first began. Matt Ryan was the first avatar of the Fathers of the Future movement. And so I created this program, this idea, this concept, this message, this mission for myself to heal some of the wounds that I had, to build the man that I had become. But after me, it was the next guy who was going to be that very first client that I coached, that I worked with, that I could teach what I had learned in my personal and professional development career. And Matt Ryan was it. We saw tremendous success working together for a couple years. If you go to my YouTube channel, which this video will be on, Matt has a video of him and his family. It's the perfect looking video to share and sell what peak performance coaching is. We filmed it in his house with his then wife and his two young boys. And so let's get right into it. And right after it, that fairy tale visual representation of your life, that's what it looked like back then.
Right. I watched that video last night, and it was a great representation of what it was at that point in time. I had left a very challenging 20-year career in commercial real estate finance. So I was, at that point in time, extremely optimistic of what was to come. And I think, you know, some timing was a little awkward there, because it was 2019, and then right in 2020 we roll into the pandemic, everything locks down, and it's like some of those dreams that I had kind of got sidetracked due to the pandemic, and then just not getting back on track after that. So I just came through a divorce, right? It just finalized in February. It was a long process, started in September of 23. So kind of a marathon. But
did you know?
So that's the part that I've had difficulty with. I look back and I go, okay, there was clearly signals there, right? but I wasn't picking up on them. But no, it came as a total shock to me. She had come home from a vacation, and just kind of the possibility of divorce was like instantly on the table, and I was just kind of shell shocked by it. And then, as a man, as I think as anyone, when they receive that information, they probably want to not have that outcome, right? And so you
Fix.
kind of you try to fix, but you come across as needy. So if that person has already like made the decision, you're not helping yourself any by being needy. So these are all things that I learned along the way during the divorce. You spend some time researching on YouTube or whatever. We go through trying to figure out what in the hell happened. But I think if I go back a lot further, it all started from my upbringing, and I didn't and I know this is the case with a lot of people. They don't have a positive their upbringing. They didn't have a positive marriage. So my parents, although they were married for a long period of time, they ultimately did get divorced, but it was not a good model for me. And I knew that, but what you don't realize is like, it's very difficult unless you really go in and do the work. You're not really aware of all these patterns that you're repeating. And so I was repeating some of the same patterns that I saw my parents do. And, basically some of the things in my ex-wife, like my mom had those characteristics and she did the same things to my dad. So it was like these patterns kept on repeating, but I wasn't aware of any of that until after the fact.
So we spent a lot of time working on personal development, your health, mindset, nutrition, fitness, movement, all the things to build and empower you, which by nature are going to empower the people around you, including your two boys. I feel like the focus was so much about yourself, as it was for me, that you didn't see something, or at least didn't see it in time. Or was there just a pure shelf life in it?
No, I think that if I'm honest, I had no business getting married. I wasn't, I truly, and I didn't know that I had things that needed to be worked out, but I really had no business getting married. And I was 33 at the time. So it's not like I was, a spring chicken, fresh out of school or something. But I just, because of the model that I saw, I really needed to work through those things to become someone else, to become myself and not repeat those patterns. But that wasn't an awareness that I had at the time.
And so your boys are how old now?
Cole's 14 and Breck is 10.
Very stoic young men, as they always have, as long as I've known them. What was that moment like for you? So a lot of guys who are listening or watching, they're not married yet, they are married, or they're divorced, right? You're in one of three buckets. And I think it's valuable information as well as a understanding from a real human being of what happened and how complex was that conversation. Did you fear it? Had you finalized things with your ex-wife to decide you were going to go into divorce? Did you live together for a set amount of time? What exactly was the next step in the process? And how did you ultimately tell your boys that you guys were going to be getting divorced and living in different homes?
Yeah, so the living in different homes part came early on in the process before the divorce even started. So I moved out of the house, which I was in retrospect was the worst thing that I could have done. Um,
Why?
well, so it gets complicated with divorce. Like you move out of the house. It's in this case, I owned the house before we got married. So what ends up happening in this case is, you know, I'm the one out of my own house having to find a rental and all this. And, you know, like my life is thrown upside down, whereas my ex-wife's life remained the same. She was in the same house and, you know, bills were being paid. And so there was no incentive to finalize. That's why it kind of, well, that's my assumption of why it dragged on so long, is because there wasn't really anything pushing on her end to actually finish, because she had a free life without me in it. And you know, I thought I was being the nice guy to kind of, you know, attempt to keep the peace or whatever. Okay, I'll remove myself from the situation, but that was actually the worst thing that I could have done for me. But the conversation with the boys was incredibly difficult because, you know, when I left, I had to tell them that I was leaving, and it was horrible. And in my mind, I was coming back. So there was, you know, that, you know, I don't know how long this will be, but, you know, I'll you know, I'm always there for you, but I just won't be living in the home.
You had hope that
Yeah, I absolutely.
you could get worked out.
I absolutely had hope. Yeah.
When did that dissolve?
The minute that I read the divorce decree, the filing.
Is there details in that in terms of, you know, what the reason is or why?
Yes. Yeah, right. I mean, it's probably a pretty boilerplate document, but then, you know, attorneys, the whole process, the divorce process, is inflammatory. So one attorney pits the other, and, you know, it's really messy. But that decree it shocked me, like, to my core. Like, I don't know this person. But it was very clear to me at that point in time there was nothing, and it actually made it easier for me to let go, because after that it was like, okay, this is just business at this point, because there isn't a possibility of reconciliation.
Did it affect your confidence? And if so, how quickly were you able to get up and out of it?
Well, it goes like this, right? Because I would say some days you're not fine, but you're handling things well, and then other days you might be bawling on the floor. You know, it's a day by day thing.
And in that, here's a emotional intelligence question that starts to stimulate my mind is, can you decipher between missing the woman or missing the family?
Well, so that was a big eye opener for me. And it's kind of hard to say it, but I only missed the family. I missed the family dynamic. That's where my head was going, is like, I just miss being together, intact as a family. But our marriage was so distant, and I didn't know that it was. It was just like, I thought okay. But it was so distant that I didn't actually end up missing her, because there wasn't much
Connection
of a
wasn't there.
connection in the first place, and I wasn't really aware that there wasn't much of a connection. I think the key in on that is, like, we did go to marriage counseling, and they recommended a book called Created for Connection, and I started reading the book, and I'm like, none of this looks familiar to me at all. Like, I have no idea to figure out how we can go from where we are today to what a healthy marriage actually is. So that was quite an eye-opener.
Yeah, I think that's vital information for someone who's in a unhealthy or unhappy relationship, and they're looking at, you know, divorce, but can't segregate or separate the wife from the family and the family dynamic. And so just hearing that, I think, is extremely important, because I know a lot of guys, some I coach and some I just know, who are in unhappy, unhealthy relationships, marriages, but are committed to the family. And the question then becomes, are you going to pretend to, love mom for that long when you are completely unhappy, or are you going to make a decision that might disrupt the family and, cause some trauma to the kids, whatever that may be? I think it's different for everyone. And get out of that sooner than later and not do it for the family dynamic. And again, not a question I know or even know how to answer, but I think it's valuable for the listeners out there. As you moved through that and things got separated, things got finalized, you told the boys, what was their sort of initial reaction, and how soon, like all kids, did the short-term memory kick in and they were on to, hey, I got 2 houses now, or I got 2 bedrooms now, right?
I mean, that was tough because in the beginning I was in a 1-bedroom condo. At that time I had been trading stocks, and there's no way that you could possibly keep a right mind trading stocks going through that. So I stopped and sold everything. But I didn't have a job at the time, so like, how do you go out and find a condo? So God was good and placed the right people at the right time in my life, and I met this guy literally the first time I met him, and we just connected. But he was doing Airbnb. Well, I was doing Airbnb at the same time, and he said, "Well, I just bought a place, and it's being renovated right now, but it'll be available, in like a couple weeks." And so that's how I got my first place. So it's like all these things. When I look back on it, God had His hand on this path. Going way back, actually.
Okay, so we'll jump here for a moment, since you said the 3-letter word God, and we have a lot of conversations on this show about faith. That was something that was not in your DNA, let alone in your day-to-day operations.
Yeah, so...
and hold on, before I have you speak on that, I actually can recall now, as I'm triggered, that there was a time after a few years of us working together that I said, Matt, I've shown you and shared with you and taught you everything that I possibly know, and the only thing that I can no longer provide for you is something that something and someone other than a human being can give you. And I think that you need to find some faith. You need to find a higher purpose. You need to find a calling. You need to have something that I can't give you. And that was kind of the beginning, I think, for you.
Yeah, so I grew up and I remember we were somewhat parallel in that, because we were both, I don't like to use the word
not agnostic, uncertain, undecisive.
Well, for me, I grew up in the church, and I went to a private Christian school, and so I was exposed to it, but then we went to university and it educated it out of me, right? And so when we first started working together, I was open to the idea of like spirituality, although it was real dim for me. But for whatever reason, I wanted to go down any other path than Jesus, like any other path. And so I ended up, when I kind of figured out the path that I was going on, it was actually pretty dark, new agey, and sometimes you think new agey is like innocent, and really when you get further in, it's not so innocent. But there were some things that God did along the way to kind of lead me back to Him. And one of them was, I used to meditate on a specific park bench at a park that's like real close to my house. You have a view of Camelback. But I did that every single day in the morning for a long period of time. During COVID, my grandma passed away. And she was a beautiful Christian woman, like just like an angel. So she passed away. It was the day that I was going to her funeral. I went to my spot where I usually meditate, and there was a coin sitting there, which I carry. Let's see if I can get it out here. But it was in the spot where I always meditate, and it was facing up, and it said, "With God, all things are possible." And that's Matthew, and my eyes are terrible, but it's Matthew something. So that, it was basically like the way that I took that message is like my grandma was God, or my grandma was communicating to me on the day that I was scheduled to fly to her funeral. So this was, in 2020, that was kind of the first little seed that I noticed, and I kind of was okay going in that direction. So it's amazing how these little things can end up changing your overall direction.
Yeah, the faith progression. I had been teaching meditation and mindset and sitting and silence and breathing and pausing and all these things to the executive clientele, to some of the Fortune 50 companies that I work with, because there's no way you can. And at that time, I didn't even know how to share a faith, let alone my faith, with another human being. And I too, like Matt, avoided at all costs, right? And to this day, I still can't stand religion or men of religion who make the rules and then break them. And so for me, I was very distant from all of it. And to see two men here sitting and kind of sharing, their faith, it wasn't a plan of mine. It wasn't in the business model. It wasn't something that I, wrote down to execute on. It came naturally, organically, and it came for me first before it was introduced into my business. And even now, these conversations are happening more and more often. My next guest on the show is a, high-level founder executive who has a ridiculously strong faith. And so I think when we can tell a story like this, it seems so much more real to the guy who is kind of like us, but maybe 20, 30 years ago.
Right.
Going, I don't know, right. I love what you said. I mean, it was educated out of you, your faith in your foundation.
It absolutely was.
Right. And for me, maybe it was hurt out of me, right? Of seeing a lot of things happen, a lot of people dying. I had a tough time with it when I grew up with scarcity and seeing people I loved, the closest people in my life growing up, all die before 24. And so I had the anti-faith mindset, but damn, I felt good when I meditated, when I prayed, when I practiced gratitude, but didn't necessarily have a rhyme or a reason behind it. So again, to kind of know your journey, to know mine, and to have us both here sitting and talking about it, it is God's plan. It is bigger than anything you and I could have ever orchestrated on paper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when I look back at when we first met, like that part of it wasn't there for either one of us. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And so the boys get this information, right? Which boy starts crying? Which boy gets upset? How did that go? And was it collective? Did the four of you sit and talk?
It ended up that we did, all four of us, sit down. It was me doing the talking, but I actually knew that it was going to happen the day before, so I pulled Cole aside and told him ahead of time, so it wasn't a shock to him. But that conversation, I mean, that's a blur. Like that's too much.
And since then, because you're talking 2 years ago, 2.5 since the initial conversation, divorce is final. What is it like now? And do you see or feel anything? Because again, most kids don't know enough to realize their emotions, but they know that, like you, they miss the family dynamic, right? But boys will tend to, find a way to either become the victim or the villain, right? They'll play the blame game or they'll get upset or angry. Have you seen any shifts or noticed anything in that?
So Cole is very even keel, and he always has been. But
Stoic.
yes, stoic. It's the hurt's there, but I think he does a better job of hiding it. I mean, the hurt's going to be there no matter what. It's a very traumatic event. But Breck has struggled with behavior in school, and that's like an ongoing challenge with him because he's mad. He's expressed it to me many times. He wants his life back. Like, buddy, I can't. It's not possible. It's that life. This is our new life.
So how do you navigate through that and know that regardless of what did happen, this is the new reality. This is the new, right? How do you stay confident, powerful, positive while also guiding these young boys to become men and knowing that sometimes relationships don't work with the woman that we married?
It's actually been really good because the time that we do spend together, so we're 50-50, but the time that we do spend together is very intentional. So, for a while we were in a place that was right next to a park, and so I would pick them up from school and we'd go straight to the park, and it was just like father-son time constantly. We didn't even have a TV hooked up at that place. I mean, there were TVs, but they weren't connected to the internet or whatever. So it was just boy time. And it's still right now, Cole does track, Breck does chess. So it's boy time, going back and forth to their different practices. And so it's just much more time together, not sitting in front of a TV or something.
You talked about having or not having a model of success or even excellence to look at when you were growing up with a healthy parents, with a healthy couple. And so now you are a single father and you are writing this model of excellence, this code of success for your boys. What is that based off of? And when you are spending time together with two young men, what are you doing? And are you having to combat the old? Or do both of them sort of know now? And I understand Breck is still emotional, but like, do they see the path forward? Do they see you as this, shining star, this model of excellence, this hero, this positive male role model that you can then plant in them of what a model of divorce and a healthy relationship with two boys looks like as a father?
Yeah, I mean, it's so when they come, when we have the transition and they come to me, a lot of the times they're just hungry for physical affection, and so they'll come and sit next to me on both sides, right? And so that is one of the best things that a man can experience is his children at his side and just hugging, right? But as far as like things that we do, it's like play. The boys have a membership to KTR, which is a trampoline park, like a indoor trampoline park and skateboard park. And so with that membership, they let the adults play too. And so I go in there and I'll jump on the trampoline with them. Well, I don't do it often because that's a workout, but just we play a lot.
Yeah. 4-letter word for all the fathers out there, especially the young fathers. And we talked about this almost a decade ago where I didn't hear or I didn't listen to my kids and what they were really calling for in that moment. And they were angry, upset, sad, mad, whatever negative emotion that they were carrying at that time. Ultimately, they wanted me to play. And I was putting it off to do other things. That's a powerful word. And you can never be too old to use it, to implement it, to live that word play.
Well, and it is a tough thing to get into. It's a tough, if you're playing with a 8 or a 10-year-old, or it's very different, right? So it is a tough thing, but when you do it, I mean, that's the best. Whether it's just as simple as like throwing a football or jumping on a trampoline, it doesn't really matter. Or the other day, we're in the pool, and they like to the pool robot, the hose. So they'll take a couple sections of the hose, and then one of them will run around the pool dragging the other. It's like simple things like that where it's like those are moments that are priceless, totally priceless.
Yeah, I share that a lot. And if you're watching this and you drive a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, maybe this isn't the right episode for you. But in our backyard, we had grass for almost a decade. And I remember one summer, we were playing with the hose, the garden hose. That was our pool at the time. We hadn't yet put a pool in. And I remember the laughs, the giggles, the energy, the love and the feeling of just being present and playing this simple game of water tag, or, duck and dodge the shooting water. This is the reality check for so many of us men who are working so hard to make so much money to support their family. And, the mantra, or the message, the code of Fathers of the Future is to be present, active, and engaged. And if you can go through that simple trifecta, right? Present, you got to be there. Active, you can't sit on the couch, you can't smoke a cigar, you can't, be doing something else. You have to be actually doing those things. And then engaged in knowing, who are their friends, what are they doing, what are the things that they're into. For the longest time, I didn't know my daughter's Subway order, and she would get frustrated to me, but what she was getting upset about was that I wasn't paying attention. And so I had to, put it in my notes, but, now it's like I've proven to her that little valuable information that's meaningful to her, that I didn't think twice about, I needed to study. I needed to learn. I needed to let her know that I knew, because I cared enough to actually remember it. That's the game changer for any dad out there, right? Taking the time and the energy to do a little bit more than what is considered the standard, raise the standard, and now go and above and beyond the call of what any dad could do. And I got one more story here, and then we're going to move to the production side of the reinvention of Matt Ryan. My phone doesn't ring. It hasn't rang in 12, 13 years. I might turn it on at certain times if I'm expecting a call or need to. And so I told both kids Saturday night, as it was prom, my son being a senior in high school, our daughter being a junior, I'm going to turn my ringer on, and if you need a ride for any reason, no matter what, I'm going to come pick you up. Okay? If your friend needs a ride for any reason, I'm going to come pick you up. I'm ready. So I fall asleep on the couch. 1:15 goes off. My daughter needs a ride. And so I said, great, I'll be right there. She texts me the address. I drive 25 minutes. I'm calling her. Where's she at? Where's she at? Well, she texted me the wrong address. Okay, no worries, baby girl. I got you. Next address, I drive down there. I'm there in 15 minutes. I pick up her and her two friends, and just in time to drive them through in and out. They weren't drinking. Their friends were. And so I was able to be a superhero, to be my daughter's superhero. And to me, it's like something so small. I wasn't buying her a Porsche for her birthday. I was simply taking the time and the energy to drive her and her friends somewhere at any time of night, 24/7, 365. And to me, that was one of the most rewarding feelings I've had in my adult kid career, right? Different ages. The reward system is different at 17 and 18, but I was able to do that. And so that matters to me, right? What matters to you right now? Last question about the fatherhood journey and where you are, but what are the things that you're teaching these boys?
Well, I think, and I didn't intentionally teach anything specific, but like a story with Cole is that he's able to, he just doesn't see the limitations. So He decided that he wanted to start a little business, and so he started painting addresses on curbs, right? And so he and his buddy, they go around the neighborhood and knocking on doors at 14 years old, and they close like more than 50%. Like if somebody answers the door, their close rate is like over 50%. They charge like 20, 25 bucks, and they'll come home with, $100 in cash in a short period of time. So just he's able to have the mindset of not having limitations, which is really cool. And the other day he was buying a mountain bike. He really wanted this mountain bike. So I put it on my credit card, it comes to the house, but he pays me in cash for he had to buy it. He counted all his money. He was taking a really long time. He comes back and he was like $20 short, but he's like, Dad, I'm going to go out and paint a curb. And so he painted a curb to like make that 20 bucks. So he just like made the money appear out of nowhere. Like that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's entrepreneurial success right there, right? Okay, so let's pivot. And in all of these shifts, right, what Matt didn't get into, what you didn't get into earlier about, leaving corporate commercial real estate was that the stress, pressure, and anxiety had built up to an astronomical rate to the point of infection. And you lived that for a few years like so many executives do, but it was time to make a change and a shift, and then COVID, and then the divorce. And so you had to reinvent yourself professionally without, again, going back to taking the job with the Fortune 50 company that pays a lot, but the demands are so painfully obsessive that you get sick, right? And we all have our own way, shape, or form of getting sick, but you had to reinvent the work that you were doing, what you were doing, how you were doing it. You're still in finance, but tell us just a little bit more about that opportunity, the position, and ultimately, how it has made you transform a little bit of your knowledge base to be in a different sector and different industry.
Right. So now I'm in a small cybersecurity company. So very different than commercial real estate, but finance is finance, right? And so that was kind of the background, was finance. So that translates really into any company. There's a lot to learn in any new industry, but finance is finance. What I found in a smaller company is that what was really difficult in a large company is that you're not really yourself. You're this corporate persona, right? You have to toe the company line. And in a small family-run corporation, it's owned by two brothers that
shout out to Jeff and Cole Corallo. Shout out to Brett Corallo too.
Yes. So it's an entirely different experience as far as you get to operate as yourself. And the huge change though is in a big company, like you're very specialized, and so you really only do like a little sliver. In a small company, you get to wear a lot of different hats, and so that has broadened my experience significantly, because it's not something that I ever had to do. I just would make a phone call, and somebody else would work out the details.
And understanding family business dynamic, but also ever evolving, shifting industry, right? Tech and AI and cybersecurity and all the sort of things that Envoy Data does, you're constantly in learn and apply, which is a different kind of fire than, dealing with specifically this one area. You're dealing with you're dealing with personnel as well, right? What has been the greatest learning that you've had from your divorce that you can now implement into every aspect of your life, right? So for the guys listening, what is that one key piece, that most important and valuable learning lesson, right? Not a loss, but from the divorce that you learned that you can apply to just about anything in your life, including your business?
Yeah, I mean, to get back up, right? I mean, in business, you're gonna get knocked down. In life, you're gonna get knocked down, but you get back up, and it's always going to make you stronger. It might take a lot longer than you think it's going to take you, but you get back up and you learn from it. You take all of those little kernels that, those things that when they're happening, you're not enjoying them, right? But all those hurdles, they're teaching you.
Yeah, you never lose. You either win or you learn, and you've learned a lot in that process. What is something if you were, looking at this video 40 years from now on your deathbed, a life well lived, and your boys were there and your grandkids were there, what is something you would like to leave, that you'd like to share, that you'd like to give to them as an original Matt Ryan golden nugget? Aside from getting back up, what's something you'd love to tell them, share them, that they need to know about their dad?
I think that the foundation for a successful life is God. So putting God first, but having it isn't money, it's relationships. And so I think putting the relationships first ahead of the money, chasing the money, putting the relationships first, but at the foundation of it all, it has to be God.
Matt Ryan, Fathers of the Future 003, Fathers of the Future 100. It's been an absolute honor not just to get to spend time with you over the years, to build my business, my practice, and ultimately what I do now for a living, with you as the case example, as the avatar, as the first client in this business 6 years ago, to see this evolution, your transformation, the reinvention, to see you sitting here poised, confident, comfortable in your own skin with who you are and why you're here. It gives me a feeling of just absolute happiness and joy, because we know from experience that you could have told a different story. And you could have used any excuse as to why you didn't or you're not getting back up. And so from the bottom of my heart and the depth of my soul, man, I just wanted to appreciate and honor you for being in my life, for being in this path, for being a guiding light to the men out there who call themselves fathers of the future. And to any man listening or watching this podcast today, it is possible. It is real. It is part of the process of falling down and getting back up over and over again. And that's the true definition of success. And so I just wanted to thank you.
Thank you, Luke. Appreciate you and everything that you do for the community, for all the men that you lead.
Thank you. If you got something out of this message, all we ask in return is that you simply pay it forward, send it via text, email, share the link, give it to somebody so that they can understand that they're not alone in this ultimate big life called manhood, called fatherhood, called brotherhood. We appreciate you guys for being here today. Peace. What's up, boys? This week's episode of the Fathers of the Future podcast is brought to you by Delight, healthy food on the go. Shout out to my brother living in Maui, Hawaii with his beautiful wife, Chad and Brooke Knudsen. This is one of my favorite places to go and get a breakfast buzz, a breakfast croissant sandwich, or any type of grinds. Healthy food on the go. So check out ScottsdalePodcast.com and reach out to my man Martin to build your podcast now.